Mom demanded I take sister's 3 kids after she abandoned them. When I refused, she showed up at my door screaming, "I'll make you regret this." The next day, I was fired. Turns out, Mom had called my boss with a shocking lie. I was halfway through a bottle of Cabernet when the pounding on my front door started. It wasn't the polite kind of knock you expect from a neighbor borrowing sugar or a delivery guy dropping off a package. No, this was the kind of hammering that made you think someone was about to kick the damn door down. I frowned, setting my glass down on the coffee table. My stomach twisted with an uneasy feeling. I already knew who it was. Dragging myself off the couch, I crossed the small living room, sighing as I unlocked the door. And there she was, Mom, standing under the dim porch light, her face flushed with anger, her hair sticking to her forehead in sweaty strands. Her old beige sedan was still running in the driveway, its headlights flooding my lawn with a yellow glow. "We need to talk." Her voice was sharp, already on the verge of yelling. I exhaled through my nose. "If this is about Delia's kids again, of course it's about the kids," she snapped, shoving past me into my house without waiting for an invitation. "They have nowhere to go, Oliver." I closed my eyes for half a second before turning to face her. I wasn't in the mood for this fight. We'd had it before, more times than I could count. I shut the door and faced her. "Mom, we've been over this. I can't take them. I work 60 hours a week. I live alone. I barely have time for myself." She spun around, her eyes blazing. "So what? You just let them go into foster care." I swallowed. She knew exactly what to say to hit me where it hurt. Jace, Bella, and Cody were my sister Delia's kids, 12, 9, and 4. 3 innocent kids who had nothing to do with the mess their mother had made of her life. And now, she was gone. Vanished. No note, no goodbye. Just an empty apartment and 3 confused, abandoned children. Mom's voice was shaking now. "They're your family, Oliver." I clenched my jaw. "And Delia was your daughter. You raised her. You let her get away with all her SHD for years, and look where it got us. Why don't you take them?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You know I can't. My health. Bullshit." I shot back before I could stop myself. "You just don't want to." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Don't you dare talk to me like that." I shook my head, raking a hand through my hair. "Mom, I get that this is hard, but I didn't ask for this. I didn't abandon them. Delia did. That's not my fault." She inhaled sharply, her hands trembling at her sides. "You're a selfish, pathetic excuse for a man." I felt that one like a punch to the gut. She stepped closer, jabbing a finger into my chest. "You think you can just walk away from this? From them? Fine. But I swear to God, Oliver." Her voice dropped to something cold and quiet. "I will make you regret this." And then she turned, storming out the door, slamming it so hard behind her that the windows rattled. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space she'd left behind. I had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, I got fired. It happened so fast, it didn't even feel real. I was at my desk at Langley & Company, buried in paperwork, when my office phone rang. "Oliver, can you come to HR?" I froze. Sarah, the head of human resources, never called unless something was wrong. I grabbed my jacket and made my way down the hall, ignoring the knot forming in my gut. Sarah was waiting for me in her office, her expression unreadable. I sat across from her, trying to keep my face neutral. She exhaled. "Oliver, we have a problem." I forced a small chuckle. "Okay, what kind of problem?" Her lips pressed together before she spoke. "We received a complaint. A serious one." My stomach turned. "Complaint?" She folded her hands on her desk. "Someone called last night. An anonymous report. They accused you of stealing from the company." I blinked. "What?" She sighed, shaking her head. "The board is taking it seriously. Effective immediately, you're suspended, pending an internal investigation." I couldn't breathe. This had to be a joke. "Sarah," I said, my voice raw, "this is insane. I would never, I know." She rubbed her temples. "But my hands are tied." "The board." My mouth went dry. "I'll make you regret this." "Oh my God." I shot up from the chair, my pulse hammering. "My mother did this." Sarah's brows knit together. "What?" "My mom." My voice cracked. She must have called." "This is her." Sarah hesitated. "That's a pretty serious accusation, Oliver." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah? So is accusing your own son of theft just to get back at him?" I could tell she didn't know what to say. "Look," she said finally, "the investigation will take time. In the meantime, you should get a lawyer." I barely made it to my car before I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. "Well?" she said, like she was expecting me. I gritted my teeth. "You got me fired?" Silence. Then, in the calmest voice imaginable, she said, "I did what I had to." My vision blurred with rage. "You ruined my life, Mom." "I warned you," she said. "Family comes first." I wanted to scream, to drive to her house and shake her until she understood what she'd done. But I knew that wouldn't do a damn thing. Mom had always been like this. Manipulative. A master of twisting the truth until it worked in her favor. She'd done it to Delia for years, guilt tripping her, backing her into corners she couldn't escape from. And now she was doing it to me. But I wasn't going to play her game. I wasn't going to let her win. I made 2 phone calls, one to a lawyer and one to Child Protective Services. Because if my mother thought she was going to BLLY me into taking those kids by ruining my life, she had another thing coming. And I wasn't going down without a fight. I didn't sleep that night. After the call with my mother, I sat in my car for hours, staring at the empty parking lot of some rundown gas station off the highway, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. My head was spinning, my pulse hammering in my ears. I was unemployed. My career, the life I had built from nothing, was crumbling because my mother had decided to punish me. For what? For refusing to raise my sister's kids? For not throwing my life away the way Delia had? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made the first call. David, I said as soon as my lawyer picked up. I need your help. David and I weren't friends, but we had known each other long enough to be on good terms. He handled corporate law, but I hoped he'd at least point me in the right direction. Jesus, Oliver, he muttered, his voice groggy. It's almost midnight. Yeah, well, my mother just got me fired, I said flatly. I need legal advice. That woke him up fast. He sighed. All right, talk. I explained everything. Delia abandoning the kids, Mom trying to force me to take them, the threats, the sudden accusation at work. David whistled low. Damn, and you're sure it was her who made the call? Who else? I snapped. A pause. Then, all right. First things first, you're going to need proof. I clenched my jaw. How the HLL am I supposed to prove it was her? She made the call anonymously. Yeah, but people like your mom don't cover their tracks as well as they think they do, David said. We can subpoena phone records, emails, anything that could tie her to it. But it'll take time. I rubbed my face. And in the meantime? In the meantime, he said carefully, we fight back. We build a case for wrongful termination. You weren't fired yet, just suspended. That means there's still time to clear your name before this gets worse. I let out a slow breath. Okay, what do I do? For now? Nothing. Don't make any calls, don't contact HR again, and definitely don't reach out to your mom. Let me handle this. I exhaled. Fine. One more thing, David said. If she's willing to do this to you, she'll go further. Be careful. I swallowed. I already knew that. The second call was harder. CPS. I had never called Child Protective Services in my life, and it felt wrong even pressing the number. But I had no choice. The caseworker, a woman named Lisa, answered on the second ring. Child Protective Services, this is Lisa speaking. I hesitated for only a second. Hi, my name is Oliver Grant. I need to report a concern about my mother. Lisa's tone sharpened. What kind of concern? I inhaled. She's trying to take custody of my sister's kids, but I don't think she's doing it for the right reasons. Silence. Then, in a measured voice, Lisa asked, can you explain? So I did. I told her everything. How Delia had abandoned Jace, Bella, and Cody. How my mother had spent weeks demanding I take them, despite knowing I wasn't in a position to do so. How she had threatened me when I refused, and then turned around and made a false report that got me suspended from my job. When I finished, my hands were shaking. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. Oliver, you're not the first person to bring up concerns about your mother. A cold chill ran down my spine. What? I rasped. There have been reports in the past. Nothing concrete, nothing actionable, but enough that we've been watching her closely. I swallowed. What kind of reports? Lisa hesitated. Emotional manipulation, coercion, unfit living conditions. My heart pounded. I had always known my mother was manipulative, that she had a way of controlling people. But this was something else entirely. Lisa continued. Oliver, if your mother is trying to take custody of these kids, we need to act fast. Do you know where they are now? I shook my head before realizing she couldn't see me. No, last I heard, they were still in temporary placement. All right, Lisa said. I'll escalate this. In the meantime, if your mother contacts you again, don't engage. And if you learn anything else, anything, call me. I nodded, even though my stomach felt like it was twisting in knots. Okay, I whispered. I will. I drove home feeling like my entire world had been flipped upside down. I had always thought of my mother as controlling, pushy, overbearing, but I had never really seen her for what she was. A dangerous woman. She had spent her life playing games with people's emotions, twisting reality to suit her needs. And now, she had set her sights on me. I barely made it through the front door before my phone buzzed again. Mom. I clenched my jaw, my hands tightening around the phone. I let it ring. Then the voicemail icon popped up. I hesitated before pressing play. Her voice came through, calm, cold. I hope you're happy, Oliver. I gave you a chance to do the right thing. Now, you'll see what happens when you cross me. A chill ran down my spine. I knew, in that moment, that this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after I turned off my phone, my mother's words echoed in my head. Now, you'll see what happens when you cross me. I had spent my whole life watching her manipulate people. Delia, my dad before he passed, her friends, co-workers. She always had a way of twisting the truth just enough to make herself the victim, to make everyone around her dance to whatever tune she played. But this was the first time she had come after me, and I was going to make damn sure it was the last. The next morning, I met David in his office. He looked like he barely had time to throw on a suit, his tie slightly crooked, coffee in hand. But his eyes were sharp and focused. "All right," he said, tossing a folder onto the desk. "I spent all night digging into your case. And, my friend, I have news." I leaned forward. "Tell me." He smirked. "Your mother's not as smart as she thinks she is." He flipped open the folder, revealing a printed record of phone logs. "She didn't block her number when she called Langley and Company," David said. "We subpoenaed the phone records, and guess what? A call came in at 10:58 p.m. the night before your suspension from your mother's number." I stared at the paper, my chest tightening. "That's not all," he continued. "I also spoke with someone from HR off the record. Turns out, the anonymous tip they received wasn't just about you allegedly stealing." I frowned. "What else did she say?" David sighed, rubbing his jaw. "She told them you had a gambling problem, that you were deep in debt and had been funneling company money to cover your losses." I let out a bitter laugh. "Jesus Christ." David nodded. "She didn't just want you fired. She wanted you blacklisted." My fingers curled into fists. "So," David said, leaning back in his chair, "you have two options. You can take this evidence to HR, clear your name, and get your job back. Or," his lips curled into a slow, knowing smile, "you can make sure your mother never pulls this crap again." I sat up straighter. "Go on." David's smile widened. "I did some digging into her. And buddy, she's got skeletons." For the next week, I laid low. I ignored my mother's calls, let her think I was too scared, too broken to fight back. Meanwhile, David and I worked behind the scenes. See, my mother had spent her whole life controlling people, but she had never been careful enough to cover her tracks. David pulled financial records, property records, even some old court filings. And what we found? Oh, it was gold. For starters, my mother had been collecting government assistance for years, claiming she was the sole caretaker for my sister's kids, even though Delia had been the one raising them. That alone? Fraud. Then there were the loans. Multiple banks. Tens of thousands of dollars. And guess what she had listed as her source of income? Child support payments for kids who weren't even in her custody. I stared at the documents, shaking my head. Unbelievable. David smirked. "You haven't even seen the best part yet." He slid another file toward me. Inside were emails. From my mother, to her landlord, her bank, even some random acquaintances, all bragging about how she was about to come into money because she was getting custody of her grandkids. She wasn't trying to take them in because she loved them. She was trying to take them in because they were a paycheck. "She's been planning this for a while," David said, shaking his head. "Probably figured if she could guilt trip you into taking the kids, she could just skim off whatever benefits she could claim for them." I exhaled slowly, my pulse pounding. This was it. This was how I ended it. A few days later, I walked into my mother's house unannounced. She was sitting on the couch, watching TV, sipping her usual cup of tea like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up when I walked in, arching a brow. "Oliver, finally came to your senses." I smiled. "Something like that." I sat down across from her, folding my hands in my lap. "I wanted to give you a chance," I said, keeping my tone calm. "To back off. To leave me and those kids alone." Her lips curled. "And what makes you think I'll do that?" I pulled out a folder, the same one David had given me. Then, slowly, I slid it across the coffee table. "Because if you don't," I said, my voice dangerously soft, "every single one of these documents is going straight to CPS, the IRS, and every damn agency that will listen." Her face paled. "What is this?" she asked, her voice suddenly less confident. "Proof," I said, "that you've been committing fraud for years. Proof that you've been lying about your finances. Proof that you've been trying to profit off your own grandkids." She reached for the folder with shaking hands, flipping through the pages. I watched as the color drained from her face. Then she snapped the folder shut and glared at me. "You wouldn't." I leaned forward. "Try me." She exhaled sharply, setting the folder down. For the first time in my life, I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, keeping my voice level. "You're going to call CPS and tell them you no longer wish to pursue custody of the kids." She opened her mouth, but I held up a finger. "And," I continued, "you're going to call my boss and tell him the truth. You're going to admit you lied, and you're going to make sure my name is cleared." She scoffed. "And if I don't?" I smiled. "Then I send everything to the authorities. And I promise you, Mom, you will lose." Her jaw tightened. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to find a way out. A way to manipulate me. But there wasn't one. Not this time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she let out a slow breath. "Fine," she muttered. I sat back, letting the satisfaction wash over me. "I'll be waiting for the call," I said, standing up. As I walked to the door, she spoke again, her voice low and sharp. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I turned to face her. "No," I said simply. I just finally stopped playing your game. And with that, I walked out, leaving her to sit in the ruins of the empire she had tried to build on lies. Within 24 hours, CPS confirmed that my mother had officially withdrawn her custody request. Within 48 hours, I got a call from my boss, informing me that my suspension had been lifted. My mother had anonymously retracted her accusations, and an internal review had cleared me completely. And within a week, the kids were placed with a real foster family, one that would actually take care of them, not use them as a paycheck. As for my mother, I never spoke to her again, and for the first time in my life, I was finally free.